going to talk a little bit about restoring some panels. This is one of 4 carved panels that came off the back of the Karn organ. I've done 3 of them already. This one is fairly nasty because it's got some water stains on over here and some other damage to the finish here. And so I'm going to show you how I restore it. There's no right or wrong way to do these things. Other people have different preferences. This is just how I do it. My goal is to preserve as much of the original finish as possible while restoring a little bit of the luster and make it look pretty again. It's not to try to restore it to original factory out of the showroom quality. The first thing I do is get the surface dirt off, which I've already done on this. Just a matter of taking a damp cloth, getting the surface dust off. Don't let the water set on too long or it'll start damaging the shellac. So just wipe on, wipe off. That gets all of the surface dirt off. Then on a carved panel like this, I start using Q-tips and denatured alcohol and just wet the Q-tip and go through all of these grooves. It's amazing how much nicer these panels look when you get the dirt out of the carving. With the Q-tip, it'll slop outside of the lines a little bit, and you want to quick get the rest off, because if you leave this denatured alcohol on the surface for too long, it will start totally dissolving the finish, and that's not what we're after. We're just trying to get the dirt out of all those little features, and that's pretty easy to do with a Q-tip. Just like I say, don't let it on the surface too long. Q-tips are cheap, so use plenty of them. Okay, so all the little features are cleaned. The next thing I do is take a clean rag. This isn't particularly clean, but it's got clean spots, so I'm going to use it anyway. Put some denatured alcohol on, and some of these areas that have a lot of grime, I'm rubbing pretty hard here, but I'm not using so much alcohol on it that it floods the surface. Now, if you really wanted to strip the surface, you would actually flood the surface and just rub it in with your gloved hand. And it would strip the shellac completely off. And I'll show you an example of a board where I had to do that a little later. But here where there's a lot of grime, I'm rubbing harder, and you can see a combination of surface dirt and some of the shellac has come off and given that yellowish stain. And now I'm doing very lightly buffing. This is not unlike French polishing, where I'm just redistributing the surface coat a little bit. And the other 3 panels, I stopped after just doing this because they look good by themselves. They didn't have any of the water spot damage. So I'll show you one of the other panels here. This panel, see if I can catch the glare of the light there. That panel was pretty good shape, just stopping at this point, but it didn't have any water spots on it. Here where the water spots are, I'm going to do just a little bit more of pressing hard and swirling. So I'm picking up a little bit of the dissolved finish and redistributing it a little bit. And that takes care of quite a bit of the, a little bit more up here. That takes care of quite a bit if it's just a superficial. But again, I don't want to do it so much that I'm taking the finish off. Everywhere else on this panel looks very nice, except those water spots are still visible. Can you see that there? So what I'm going to do now, and I also have this other damaged part right here where it looks like it got scratched or chipped. I'm going to have to put some extra stain there. What I like to use for the stain is General Finishes Java Gel stain. The nice thing about this, it's a gel. You can put it on, let it on longer or shorter, wipe it off, and It's compatible with shellac and oil finishes and so forth. Be sure to stir it. I used this earlier a little bit ago. So I'm going to take a Q-tip with a little bit of this on and just try touching up this defect here in the corner. And I'm just going to put plenty of it on and let it set a good long while, and so that it gets nice and dark. And with bare wood, it turned dark pretty quick already. That's probably good enough right there. Wipe the excess off. So that's fixed that little area up pretty good. Some of these other areas need a little bit of touch up there and up here, down in those grooves, a little bit there, a little bit there. Some of this area is hidden behind a panel. Wipe off that excess. Down at this end, that all looks pretty good. Now where the water damage is, or the water spots, I should say, it's not damaged. The finish is still there. It's just got little raindrop kind of effects there. I'm just going to take a little bit on a rag and circular motions and leave it set on there for a little while. And then wipe off. It doesn't completely remove it, but it tends to blend in the lighter areas with the darker areas, and although it's still there, it's just not nearly as visible as it was before. Do the same thing up here where I have a little bit of that. And down the middle, it seems to be a little bit lighter on this panel. Now I got a little bit of that gel in my carved area, so I want to make sure I get that out. Q-tip to the rescue. A little bit too much on the rag. Okay, then get a clean part of the rag and just buff it off. And really all I'm doing is kind of blending in so it's not nearly as visible. And now you can hopefully see that there is still a little bit of that, but it is really not very noticeable. A couple of areas here are still a little bit lighter. Those will actually be behind the frame. These panels are nailed in behind a frame. But just to show you, you can take that area and don't rub as hard. Leave more of it on. So now I'm just very lightly removing whatever is on the surface. You don't have to remove it all, just gently. And that's the nice thing about Java Gel. You can leave a little bit on, leave it longer, rub all of it off completely, leave a little bit more on, and that looks fairly good to me. There's still some apparent irregularities there, but it's not so bad. Now, if you wanted, you could put a light coat of shellac on this. I'm not going to do that because I didn't do it on the other three panels, and I want all of them to look about the same. But the other three panels are just fine without doing anything more. In fact, these I didn't even have to put any of the stain on. Now, show you a picture of the top of this organ and what it looks like when I completely stripped it. Okay, so the top of this organ had a bad crack right here. It was about 1/8 of an inch wide. I had to fix that. There are a lot of water stains on top of here. This whole top, I flooded without the other stuff off. It was just this plain board on the bench. But just flooded the surface with denatured alcohol, let it set, wiped it off with paper towels, and that stripped the finish off, but not the stain. So most of the stain stayed, and you can see the other end here as well. So I did the whole top because the top just had a lot of water stains, and I did the same thing after I stripped it down. I put the Java Gel on it and then shellac, and this is a pretty good match by my book. That looks pretty good to me, so you can see how easily that can come back.